By now, many people have already thought about the aliens in Disclosure Day. The ships, the panic, the government secrets, the mystery, the spectacle. All of that is there. But I think if we stop there, we miss the real reason Steven Spielberg is showing us this story now. At this stage of his life, Spielberg is not simply asking us to look up at the sky and wonder, are they real? He is asking us to become quiet enough to hear what the arrival means. In other words, Disclosure Day is not mainly about seeing aliens. It is about listening how to listen to the other, to truth, to mystery, to the voices we keep pushing away. Hi, I'm Jay Lee, and this is Deeper into Film, where we use cinema not just to understand movies, but to understand ourselves. Today we are going deeper into Disclosure Day with full spoilers, not as another alien movie review, but as a reflection on what Spielberg may be asking us to hear. If this kind of reflection speaks to you, I hope you will subscribe and stay with us this channel so we can keep going deeper together. The most important thing about Disclosure Day may be not the aliens are enormous, but Spielberg does not treat spectacle as the final meaning. Yes, the sky changes. Yes, the world panics. Yes, institutions shake. But again and again, the film returns to human faces. Fear, silence, confusion, denial, longing. He has always been interested not only in what appears, but in what happens to the human soul when it appears. In Jaws, the shark is frightening, but the deeper story is fear, responsibility, and courage. In E.T., the alien is not simply a creature from space. He becomes a test of human tenderness. In Close Encounters of the Third Kind, contact is not only scientific, it feels almost spiritual, like a call that ordinary life cannot silence. So when Spielberg returns again to the question of contact, we should not only ask, what are the aliens? We should ask, what kind of listening is he asking from us? Because listening is not the same as hearing sound. Hearing is physical, listening is moral. Listening means I allow something outside myself to matter. Listening means I stop turning everything into my fear, my opinion, my politics, my religion, my trauma, or my need to be right. And that is where Disclosure Day becomes much more than an alien story. The aliens are the other. And by the other, I do not mean complicated classroom concept. I mean a presence that is real, but not under my control. The other is the person, truth, wound, mystery, or God who refuses to become a smaller version of me. The other says, I am here, but I am not your possession. I am not your projection. I am not your enemy just because I disturb you. And that is why the aliens in this film are so unsettling. They arrive from outside our categories. They do not ask our permission before making the world larger. And that is exactly where the movie becomes personal, because every life has its own encounter with the other. A spouse says, you have not really heard me for years. And instead of listening, we defend ourselves. A child becomes distant, and instead of asking what their silence may be saying, we lecture. Someone from another culture, another race, another generation, another pain enters our world, and we quickly decide what they must mean before we have truly heard them. Even our own grief tries to speak, and we turn on the phone. Our loneliness tries to speak, and we get busy. Our body tries to speak through illness or exhaustion, and we keep saying, I'm fine. God may be trying to speak through silence, but we demand an answer that fits our schedule. This is why Disclosure Day feels so important. It is not only about whether humanity can survive alien contact. It is about whether we still have the capacity to receive what does not already sound like ourselves. Yes. And that may be the deeper sadness of the film. The arrival could have been a moment of wonder. Humanity could have said, we are not alone. We are not the center. The universe is larger than our fear. But the first response is panic, control, secrecy, suspicion. Why? Because wonder requires surrender. Wonder requires the death of the illusion that I am in charge. Fear says, if there is more than I knew, then I am no longer safe. Wonder says, if there is more than I knew, then I may have to become larger, humbler, and make awake. And I think this is where Spielberg's age matters. A younger filmmaker might use aliens may need to impress us. Bigger ships, bigger explosions, bigger revelations. But late Spielberg seems more interested in a quieter question. After all our technology, all our information, all our noise, can we still humbled by what we do not understand? That is why the word listen matters so much. Listening is one of the most difficult spiritual acts because it requires me to stop being the center for a moment. It asks me to make room. It asks me to admit that my first reaction may not be the truth. I may be frightened, but fear is not always wisdom. I may be angry, but angry is not always strength. I may be certain, but certainty is not always faith. Sometimes certainty is just fear wearing a religious or political costume. But listening requires more than lowering our defenses. It requires a kind of courage, the courage to remain present when everything in us wants to explain, escape, or control. Listening does not mean being naive. It does not mean accepting everything. No, it does not mean every voice is good or every mystery is safe. It means I allow reality to be larger than my reaction. This is deeply connected to Christian tradition. Again and again, the spiritual command is not first explain, control, or win. It is hear, listen. Let those who have ears hear. Why? Because truth often arrives before we are ready. Grace often sounds strange before it sounds comforting. And the voice that heals us may first feel like an interruption. And that is what happens when the other appears. The other interrupts my self-enclosed world. The other breaks my little system. But that interruption may be mercy. It may be the moment when my prison finally cracks open. So if we bring this back to our ordinary lives, the question becomes very personal. What is our disclosure day? Maybe it is not a spacecraft. Maybe it is the truth that our marriage has been full of words but not enough listening. Maybe it is our child becoming someone you cannot control. Maybe it is retirement when the identity built around work, success, usefulness, and being needed begins to fall away. Maybe it is aging. Maybe it is illness. Maybe it is failure. Maybe it is the painful realization that you have been angry for years because underneath the anger, there is an old wound still asking to be heard. These moments frighten us because they are other. They do not fit our plan. They arrive and say, your old story is too small. Listen. And here is the hopeful part. The other does not always come to destroy us. Sometimes the other comes to free us from the prison of ourselves. The truth that says, I am lonely may be painful, but it can open the door to real connection. Yes. The truth that says, I am afraid may be humiliating, but it can open the door to courage. The truth that says, I cannot control this person may hurt, but it can open the door to real love. Because real love begins only when the other is allowed to be real. If my spouse must always agree with me, I'm not loving a person. I am loving a mirror. If my child must become my dream, I'm not loving my child. I am loving my projection. If God must only bless my plan, I am not listening to God. I am using God as a spiritual assistant. Right? Yes. Real love begins when I stop saying, become me, and begin to say, I will listen. And that, to me, is the mature heart of Disclosure Day. Spielberg is not simply showing us aliens. He is showing us the crisis of a world that has forgotten how to listen to the other, to truth, to mystery, to one another, to our wounds, and perhaps even to God. The spectacle is large, but the invitation is quiet. Become less arrogant, become less reactive, become reducing everything strange to a threat. Stop reducing everything strange to a threat. Recover wonder. Not childish wonder that avoids reality, but mature wonder. The kind that can stand before what it does not control and say, I do not understand everything, but I am willing to be changed. So maybe Disclosure Day is not late Spielberg trying to impress us with another alien event. Maybe it is late Spielberg giving us one of the simplest and hardest invitations of all. Listen. Listen before you judge. Listen before you control. Listen before you run. Listen before you turn the other into an enemy. Because when reality speaks in a voice we did not expect, the question is not only whether we can survive it. The deeper question is whether we can become human enough to hear it. I'm Jay Lee, and this is Deeper into Film. If this reflection helped you see Disclosure Day as more than a sci-fi thriller, I hope you will subscribe and stay with us. And here's my question for you. What is the other in your life right now? The person, truth, wound, mystery, or voice you may need to stop explaining and finally begin to listen. Thank you for watching.